let's talk about influencer Senat. Senat. I don't know.
Yes, a lot of people have trouble pronouncing his name. I think it's Senat, but Senat, but it's hard to know.
So he's a Twitch streamer, right? So on he's a Twitch streamer that he just recently did a giveaway for some, I think they were PlayStations or something like that. I'm not going to make myself sound as old as the person on this news story. He said some gaming machines, and he kept saying gaming machines. I'm not that old, right? But I'm pretty sure they were PS4s or 5s. I don't know, whatever they're up to.
I thought they were 6s. Is there a
PS? Is it? Okay,
I'm
maybe it
sure.
is then.
That's why people wanted them.
Oh, well, that's the latest one. That's how I'm out of touch, but I'm not so out of touch that they are gaming machines. He definitely wasn't giving it away an Atari 2600. But he went into Times Square. Sorry, no, it was in Manhattan somewhere. Where he offered to give away some PlayStations. Where are we? Where was it? Union Square. It was in Union Square. And who was it? At first it was a couple of hundred people that turned up. And then it just became thousands of people that turned up. Like, look at that. Like, there's just people rioting and climbing on cars, and the people were dancing on cars and smashing windows and everything like that. And he's been arrested for inciting violence. There's been a whole bunch of people that have been, 65 people that have been arrested and everything about this riot, right? Ugly scenes. I just have to say, as a bit of a side note, I am so sick of seeing these riots. I'm so sick of people just trying to find any excuse to go and be destructive. We're talking, before, we keep saying this is about, influence, leadership, not just about influence, but what's best for the community, what's best for society. These riots and stuff are not good for anyone. I don't believe they're good for anyone. So it's a pity to see that's what's happening. But Dr. Rod, is it his fault?
Short answer, no.
Okay. Why not?
Do you know how lawless New York City is?
Yes.
People think they can do anything and that there won't be any consequences. And that guy, Ray Kelly, who was interviewed on the video clip, that was his view, actually, that all those people who have been arrested, they'll be released without charge. We'll see if that happens. I remember years and years ago, and this is a long time.
He was the former chief of police there or something?
Yeah, former chief of police. That's right. Ray Kelly, former chief of police. I remember years ago now, it's nearly 50 years, well, it actually is 50 years ago since I started my university degree. It's a long time ago. Believe it or not, rioting was happening then too.
Yeah.
And I remember reading a paper, which I can't remember the name of the author now, but the title was Rioting for Fun and Profit. And people just use any excuse. One, for young people especially, rioting's not bad fun, because they're letting off steam and they tend not to like authority, and especially when you think there's no consequences, why not? So social media sort of propagates an event and people turn up. The other thing, and I don't think this was the case in this particular riot, but rioters often loot from shops. So throw in a shop window and off they go. That's the for-profit part of rioting. So look, I don't think he can be blamed. What he did, maybe it was unwise. Maybe he had no idea about how many people might be interested in winning a PlayStation. But I don't think, and I followed this story for a few days now, I don't think there's any evidence that he had this idea in his mind that he was going to draw thousands and thousands of people and start a riot. So I don't think he is to blame. I don't think we can blame him for it. But I do think it's a consequence of lawlessness in New York City. And I think anyone who's a little bit conservative probably has a lot of concerns about what's been happening in terms of law and order in New York City. And I think it's more a symptom of a lack of leadership in the area of law and order than it is in terms of a social media influencer.
So I agree with you that it's not his fault about the riot. However, he does have some responsibility. One of my past businesses that I ran was an events management company, and when we put on an event, we had to go through all of our safety regulations and go through our risk assessments and get all the right insurances and think of all the possible outcomes that could have happened. We went and scanned, had to get police permission and get private security and hire fences and put them up, and we had to do an event properly. It costs money and to do it properly and safely. And there were many events we had that attracted more people than expected, but we put the measures in place to prevent things from happening. Now, I think that this is where, yes, it's not his fault that a riot happened. People need to take responsibility for that and stop that. Just stop it. Seriously, just stop it. Just grow up. But anyway, I think that influencers or leaders do need to take responsibility. We as leaders need to take responsibility and understand that. I think that where I feel like we as a society have gone is we've gone in a way that is, there's so much easy access to things now, right? To do a podcast now, we just have a couple of cameras and $50 a month subscription to a software, and we can do it rather than having millions of dollars worth of equipment in a studio, right? The same as everything, it's just become more accessible for people to do things. So I think that because it's easier for people to do things, they've not taken the proper steps to be responsible about it as well. And I think that that's one big message we should, that influencers, just because you happen to just post things online and now you have 1 million followers and now you're an influencer and popular, I think that they've kind of negated the rite of passage or the apprenticeship or learning to, I didn't just step in and do my first big event. I helped out a bunch of events. I started small, it grew. I learned my mistakes. I built over time. I couldn't just turn up and just go, well, I'm going to throw an event for thousands of people in the middle of New York City. I couldn't do that because I had to grow to a stage where we had events where we had thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people that, at some of the events I was involved in. But we grew to that and we learned along the way. I think that these leaders, they haven't. These influencers, they've just gotten influence. They haven't actually grown personally. And I think that they've lost that responsibility that if you're, just because it's easy enough you can just do a post and get a bunch of people there, that shouldn't negate the fact that you should take proper protocols, get proper permits, do your risk assessments, do all that sort of stuff. How can we, obviously not legislation, and I don't want to regulate influencers or anything like that, but where can influencers start growing up a little bit and taking a little bit of responsibility for themselves?
Well, I mean, I don't even know whether he would have seen this as an event or anybody would have seen it as an event.
But that's the problem. You should have. And he had a PR company. It was a PR company that ran it for them. They're all apologizing now. They're like, sorry. But it's that's the problem. Why didn't they see that? He's got millions of followers in the middle of New York City offering free gaming consoles. You're silly if you're not expecting that many people to turn.
Yeah, look, I take your point, but as you were working through that, I was thinking about a radio station with an outside broadcast van, and they're giving away prizes, and they'll appear in your suburb anytime without notice.
Yeah.
What kind of protocols did they go through? And it just seems to me this is the analogue of that kind of thing. So I see your point. I've got to think it through a little bit, but and I suppose we're talking about New York City, where there are a lot of people. It's a bit different to a radio station
In
driving
Toowoomba.
their outside broadcasting van to the to a corner in a suburb in Brisbane or on the Gold Coast or somewhere like that, or in Toowoomba, for that matter, where you might get a crowd of 50. Yeah, I do see your point. I do see your point.
No, you tell me. Like, let's talk about that, because you used to run a radio station. And,
well, I did, yeah.
Well,
sort of.
Did you, not sort of, you ran a radio station. It was a community radio station, but still, did you guys ever do outside broadcast?
Oh, yeah, we did.
Things?
We did, but yes, we did. Yes, we did.
And did you consider were there any conversations around safety or anything like that?
Listen, that was back in the days before you had to worry about things like that. So seriously, we planned on things like crowd control, and you're going to make sure there's a first aid post and that kind of thing. But event management is very different now to what it was, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
When I was involved in radio and doing outside activities and so on. But society has changed as well.
Yeah.
People don't take responsibility anymore.
No.
Back then, people took a fair degree of responsibility. So we've now got this. We've got to the point where I think it's the government's responsibility to keep us safe in every venue, in every circumstance. We don't take responsibility ourselves. And so now if you organise an event, there is a lot of paperwork. It's required by legislation, and there's hardly any responsibility placed upon anybody else other than the event organiser. It's crazy. We're in a crazy world. But I do take your point that he was perhaps naive, and maybe his PR people were a bit naive in believing that the offer was only going to attract maybe a couple of hundred people. And, of course, that's all it did attract initially. Then it propagated. And I don't know to what extent he could have even been expected to anticipate something like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it would have happened like that in another city. New York's got some pretty serious problems with law and order. That didn't exist a few years ago. But I do take your point, but I'm not quite fully persuaded. That's what I would say.
I just feel like I think there definitely needs to be someone responsible, right? If the influencer themselves aren't, then the problem is his PR company probably isn't just, how do I say this? They're probably not an experienced PR company. There's probably some kids that started up a digital marketing company because they knew how to do stuff, reached out to him and said, I'll help you grow and stuff like that. And I think that's where, because we've now lowered the bar for barriers of entry, that now anyone can do it, that I think we have lost a little bit of the experience, the wisdom that comes with some of the organizations that have been doing it for a while, that they've learnt, they follow their procedure, they've got all their safety regulations set up, that if it was an experienced PR company, they would have said, no way, we've got to organize police, we've got to organize this, we've got to organize, so I don't know. I think that I'm not saying he's at fault at all. I agree with you on that. But I also feel like I think that we, going back to us as leaders, I think we need to take some responsibility of are we running too fast for our own knowledge and experience? Are we growing too fast? Are we getting to a point where we could do with some wisdom around us to do things a little bit better, I feel like now I know I've already called myself an old man on this podcast, but I'm now going to say us young people, we think that we can just do it without the previous generation. We think we can do it better. We think we can do it without you, and you guys just ruined everything for our generation. We're gonna ignore you. But I don't think there's wisdom in that. I think that there's wisdom in us joining hands and joining forces and learning from the old guard, so to speak. That yes, we've got some new things to bring, but we've also got some lessons to learn as well. And I'm sure if we could, as influencers, as young influencers that are coming up, let's not just try to be rebels for a cause and not just doing things anti-establishment. Let's not try to just be doing things our own way and trying to be against the old guard. There's some things that we can learn from the old guard as well, and there's some things that they can learn from us as well. Hey, you just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership Podcast. If you like that, hit the like button and put a comment below. Hey, if you want to watch more videos like this, check out our channel, and while you're there, make sure you subscribe.